Yeah, it's okay. Come.
Should we begin then?
Yeah.
We have 50. Yeah, we have reached 50 participants. All right, then. Hello, everyone. And on behalf of the NPMHR, we would like to welcome all of you to this, our 21st Morung Dialogue. This time the theme is centered around one history and many stories. And I will not bother, elaborating on this theme because we, first of all, the concept note has been shared with everyone, and our very capable panelists are there. But before we proceed and hand over, the rest of the proceedings to Ayaw Jajo, who will be chairing the session, I would like to again tell everyone here that this is being done in tribute of the great tragedy of Oinam and in memory also of our dear member of MPMHR, Dr. P.S. Loren, who recently passed away. So, Ayaw?
Yes.
Yeah, please take over.
Thank you, Akam.
Okay.
And I just want to welcome everybody who is joining in on the 21st Morung Dialogue. I was wanting to dig back a little and found that it had actually begun from 2014. And so this 21st dialogue is preceded by the one that was held in December of last year. So it's been a good 6-7 months. And this particular topic, one history, many stories, is something which I think all of us clue in to what we mean by this. And the Naga family scattered all over the Naga homeland. We have one history, but because we are scattered, we also have many stories, but those stories would all resonate with each one of our hearts because we have lived it and we are living with a long history. There have been so many bloody conflicts. And I think today we are talking about the fact that this so-called peacetime, it is something which is extremely fragile, but how can the conflict worsen during peacetime? This is what we would like to also look at through our panelists and what they have also what they have to say on this. Today, I would just want to go into this tribute that we are paying. We are paying this tribute to Onere Day, which is also called the Great Battle of Oinam. This Great Battle of Oinam is something which is now in its 34th anniversary. And we're talking about an incident that occurred on the 9th of June in 1987, but it continues till today because the justice that is being sought has not yet been received. That justice is not something that has yet come about in the lives of our people who suffered in the 25 villages that were affected in that incident of 9th July. Today, in many areas of the Pume people and in other areas of our Naga homeland, people have remembered and people have prayed and people have shed tears and people have remembered the lives that were lost, the incidents that took place, and the tragedy that is still an ongoing saga. This tragedy should end with making some sense of it through some justice, which will offer closure. But this has still not happened. And that is what is also a matter of great concern. I just want to bring to your notice the fact that the Imphal High Court had on the 13th of June 2019 passed the order that the Home Secretary, Government of Manipur, should constitute a committee within a period of 3 months from the date of the order of the High Court. And they were to take into consideration all the allegations that had been made, the complaints that had been received, the different atrocities that were listed. But this has yet to happen. And so justice in the Oinam case is something that is still being awaited. And it is something which, therefore, MPMHR was compelled to file a contempt petition. And that contempt petition is still in the High Court because of the pandemic also. The question of chasing it up and seeing to the many intricacies that require it to be revived, not exactly revived, but to get moving, is also something that became a problem. There are conversations on regarding what to do. How shall we best take it forward? But it has to have closure. We're talking about just peace. And there are many who are unable to have closure because the court which began this case, the court which passed a final order, is not in a position to see that its orders are carried out. That is where things are just now. But today, there have been services, there have been remembrances, there have been prayers that have been offered in the particular areas, but all over. I think our people are also remembering. I hope they are remembering what had happened in Oinam, because those are our people and it is a part of our history and it is one of our many stories. I think when we talk about the Oinam incident, we also remember that the Oinam case was taken to court in order to seek justice, in order to have some redressal, in order to see to it that the kind of atrocities that just abused all the human rights of our people could find some means of redressal. Now, in order to activate that, we just remember the fact that there were people who had begun Naga People's Movement for Human Rights. Today, we also want to bring in our tribute to Dr. Lauren. He is one of the founder members of MPMHR. I personally did not know him very well, but He is known to so many of us. And when I spoke to Dr. Gina a few days ago, she was also recalling him. And Dr. Gina remembers that in JNU in those days, there weren't many restrictions. They were free. They visited each other in the various hostels. And in that kind of an environment, they were able to meet up quite easily.
For the best meeting.
But we do remember that there was the climate of severe repression, oppression in India in 1977. And that climate was what also gave the push to our people, especially the student community in JNU in particular, to also be able to voice our people's desire for just peace. And what Dr. Gina said was, I was not one of the persons who went in initially, but when we found Dr. Lorin, when we found him solidly there, and he was somebody who was just so steady, we got the inspiration also to join up. And this is something which is said of Dr. Lorin a great deal. Not somebody who speaks or talks on, more on the silent side, and yet such a man of worth that his very presence inspired many of the students, those who were more comfortable to follow, those who eventually got on board and became a part of MPMHR also. And I would say this is how we remember Dr. Lorin, a man of few words, but a man who lived out his convictions. A very good man, a resourceful man, a man who was learned. Actually, it was something which one found out only after his passing away, that he had gone on to also do his PhD in the Southern Illinois University in the USA. And he came back, he founded Tetso College, and he was, to the end, someone who was interested in the question of the Naga struggle coming to a solution. He was one of the members of FNR, and he had given his time in pursuit of the common Naga dream for just peace. As one of the founding members, and indeed not just that, but the first convener of NPMHR, today we want to pay our tribute to him. The case we were talking about just a little while earlier would never have reached the Imphal High Court for the peace, the justice that the Oinam incident triggered, were it not for people like Dr. P.S. Lorin, who had, out of their concern and the need that they saw, begun this movement. And so there are many reasons why we look back on our history. There is a need to look back, and it enriches us and it gives us confidence that there was something that was well begun. And today, I think maybe Dr. Lorin's children, Kulo and Hiwasa, may also be with us. I hope they are. And we just want you to know the loss of your father on the 31st of May 2021 did not go without our notice. It didn't go without our prayers. It didn't go without our regrets. But we did want, though some of us individually reached out to your family, we did want that within this time today, we would also be able to pay our tribute to your late father. We hope the college that he has founded, Tetso College, which both of you are now in charge of, Kulo and Hiwasa, that this college will produce many students who understand their identity, who have a vision for the Nagas and for themselves, and who will also contribute to the just peace that we are all pursuing. I'd just like to say that on this occasion, we also would like to maybe take a minute to observe silence during this time in his memory. And I'd ask all of you to just shut your eyes and take a minute's silence. Oh, God bless you. Thank you. What you want to do for this family, that you would heal and comfort them. I would thank you, Lord. Each one. Thank you. May God bless Dr. Lauren's family, his the institution he founded. We also ask that all of us continue to be supportive of the Oinam case, which is still in court, in whatever way we can, as we reach out to you in the coming days. Today, we, for this particular title, One History, Many Stories, have a very interesting panel. I was very enthused when I looked at the names there. We have, first of all, Vio Po, and if I have mispronounced your name, Vio, please excuse me. He's a writer and associate professor in one of the colleges in University of Delhi. He has also come out with a book last year, Waiting for the Dust to Settle. And being somebody from the Pume community, the Oinam tragedy is something he's close to. And I am sure we would be able to hear from someone firsthand who has the background to what had happened, but also an overview of what the kind of narrative is on, the kind of conversation that people are having in present times. I think we would like to hear, as a Naga, what is it that today, why should it be that there is a widening gap between generations and genders? Why should there be a widening gap between tribes, indeed villages, down to that level? And the concern is to be able to distinguish for ourselves truth from propaganda and from many, many conspiratorial plots that are on in our homeland and beyond. We need genuine information on which to base our struggle. And we are hoping that our panelists will bring it out. We have the second panelist, James Wonglet. He was the former home, and also he held finance and civil supplies portfolios as a minister in Arunachal Pradesh. He is somebody who has seen real politics. He is in real politics. We will have a very interesting perspective from him with regard to the so-called peace times in which we are living right now, but during which time we find that the cacophony of voices, so many different voices, is drowning out, is burying the truth. And that is not just something which is happening because of others. It is something which is happening from within. The narrative within the Naga family is also very frayed. It is pulling and tugging with contending parties with different tangents. And we need to be able to see clearly what it is that we're grappling with right now in the 21st century. This struggle may have begun 60 years ago, but in the 21st century, what is it? What are we up against? We need to identify and address. I'm so happy that Kegwehon Tep, the president of Naga Students Federation, is one of the panelists. He is someone who has been at the helm of NSF for perhaps just a few months now. And if there is any pan-Naga organization, it is NSF. And their reach is far. We look forward to many good leadership coming from NSF. And we would like to hear about what the youth also aspire towards in these days of so-called peace times. And so many of our youth would only look for economic opportunities. Many of them are without any regard for the freedom struggle. Many of them are also without hope for many reasons. And we need to inspire hope through the conversations that take place within ourselves and within the Naga family. So I would be calling on the panelists. View Po first, James Wonglet after that, and Kegwahon Tep. I would like each of you to take 10 minutes each. And after we have the three of you, then we will have some time of interaction. For that, we would ask those who are with us today to leave their questions in the chat box, or they may also just speak up. We can take questions as you speak up also, and we can have a good time of interaction. But finally, I would like to say that whatever we need to say has to come respectfully. It has to come in order to be able to understand the topic today and to give further impetus to our going on as a family and listening to many stories, many voices, but all coming together to weave the fabric that will bring just peace to the Naga society. With that, I want to welcome, first of all, Vio Pau. Please take your time. 10 minutes begins from now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayo, the chair of this session. I will try to be as quick and brief as possible within the specific time given to me. But I cannot go further before I thank the NPMHR, particularly Akam, who reached out to me. So he gave me the title of the dialogue, One History, Many Stories. But I said, what do you want me to share? So he said, you can share anything on the topic, but also wants me to bring in a little bit about what I have, talked about in my novel. So which is what I'm going to do, blend my talk a little bit of what is in the book, and at the same time also share my thoughts on these things. The very fact that, NPMHR wants to have a dialogue with lesser known people like me, a layperson, is already telling enough that, you want to hear many stories. And I think that's very important for me, I should say, because we often look for tall leaders, and I'm not one, but you are willing to listen. So I must congratulate the NPMHR on that aspect. I also want to pay my tribute to the P.S. Lawrence family, the first convener of NPMHR, and the legacy that he has left behind. And also, of course, not forgetting the Wayanam incident, or also the aftermath of that incident, which is also referred to by the name Operation Bluebird. Now, of course, as the chairperson mentioned, that 9 July is often a landmark to many people who were affected by this incident. And in one of the book discussions in beginning of this year, organized by the Naga Scholars Forum, Hyderabad, one of the scholars pointed out, you have one sentence which has 9 July 1987, full stop. And she was commenting on that and the interesting aspect to it. But I must say that 9 July 1987 is a story which is, kind of central to my novel. And also because one of the things that I wanted to draw our attention to is how people, the ordinary citizens, are affected by that event. And today's dialogue, the topic being one history, many stories, actually interests me a lot, because what I intended to do with my novel is this, that there are so many multiple stories that we often ignore. And often they may actually fit the pieces, the missing pieces of history, if we closely look into. So the smaller voices of ordinary citizens need to emerge. And that is something which we also look at. So I'll just briefly mention 3 points along the line, which our chair also has clearly spelled out in this aspect. Well, we are all part of the big story of the Naga family, or the movement. We all have different stories. We have different perspectives to how we can contribute to the whole thing. So the first point I want to make is that it is important to tell individual stories of everyday experiences. Just recently I read the book Kugnalim, Naga Armed Resistance, edited by Nandita and Sebastian. I'm sure many of you have read. Well, the interviews there of the leaders of the undergrounds as well as people in the public spheres are very interesting, because they tell of their stories and how they see things from their own angle. What I thought is largely missing in most of our narratives is that we've been listening to these so-called leaders in every aspects of the time. It's not that those are not important, they are very important. And yet at the same time, what we also need to look at is also the lesser people who are affected by the whole movement. We've been, you see, one of the things that I think we lose fact is also that often we don't see the objective perspective to the whole movement. By that I mean, for example, when I was growing up, in Senapati district of Manipur, and this is the same thing which is happening even now in many parts of I guess, the Naga country, is also that we are being fed by a kind of a narrative wherever, let's say, one underground group dominates, their story is being sold. And I didn't know that, the same truth is being told by somebody's group in their own narrative, blacklisting the other. So what I hear of the underground movement is a different picture when I hear from my brother and sister from another region where another group dominates. So what happened in course of time is that we begin to embattle, questions of which one is a valid history. And I guess this is also the reason why factionalism continues to still exist. We have not quite learned to listen to one another. Also, at the same time, not even listening to people who actually are part of the movement. For instance, just to elaborate on that, many years back, this was the time when NPMHR used to have the journal. In 2002, I think, if I'm not wrong, Dolly Kikan published an article in the NPMHR journal. And she actually wrote about the silencing of women narrative in the whole Naga movement, that women's voices are not there. Often it is the case, even today. And it struck me from then that often our narratives, even our national movement narratives, are so patriarchal in its nature that, men often dominate the discourses. It is not that women do not have the brain. In fact, they may actually have been able to produce much more wisdom than many men are. So often women are reduced to anonymity. Their identity is not, they're just wives, nameless soldiers who have sacrificed their blood and, thing. Now, I remember reading a book, Remembering War, the Great War Between Memory and History in the 20th Century by Jay Winter. It's a seminal book, and I think one of the points that he made is that he says now, witnesses' account hold its weight. And often when we talk about witnesses, who are the witnesses? It is the women, who is the ordinary citizens who become the dominant narrative of all these things. So whether it's the First World War or the Second World War, when we look at history, history is about memorizing in one way or the other. How do we look at these things? And so my first point is that unless we are able to let these kind of small narratives, women narratives, ordinary citizen narratives, emerge on the scene, we will not be able to see the larger picture. The second point I want to make here is that we should be, and which I attempt to do, which I attempted with my novel, is that I attempted to write community memory. When I talk about community memory, when I say community, community is the larger picture, the society that we all belong to. I started out with that intention that I want to let multiple individuals emerge as important categories of speakers, of voices from the novel. I did not want my novel to have one single character who will dominate the whole discourse and yet, bring out a sense of a superhero. How am I successful in that? To what extent am I successful in that? Only my readers can tell me about it. But I wanted different narratives, layers of narratives to emerge so that people will also be able to see that even an incident like the Wayanam incident affected a lot of people, which we may not necessarily be able to see. But what do I mean by writing community memory? Writing is one way of telling. Writing is a way of telling. And the community is the central focus of the telling. The community is the central focus of the telling. And memory is where I use the method to bring about the telling of the story. So in one way, to that extent, what I mean to say is that telling is a way of preserving. Especially we are all part of the oral culture. Nagas are part of the oral culture. We tell those stories to preserve it. And I think I need not go into elaborate on this ground, whether it be the knowledge, history, or culture. It is passed down from generation to generation with the word of mouth. And that's an important aspect which you also need to look at. And, just to add to that point is that writing is also an art of witness. I think because we are part of the oral culture, often we forget the power of writing. Certainly, yes, we are not a writing community, that I can say. We are not even a reading community. I'm sure many people, don't even subscribe newspapers. And I hear stories about the struggling newspapers back home, Morung Express, Eastern Mirror, and all those kind of things. How many people read? That is the whole question which we also need to ask. But I think we need to take cognizance of the changing aspects of how many of these things need to come in as a way to intervene in our lives so that we can see things from a better perspective. When I talk about writing, it is not necessarily opposed to orality. I think writing is also a continuation of orality in that sense. It preserves the knowledge system that we have. And because we are from such a close-knit society, what affects one person affects the rest of the people. There is a sense of shared destinies in all of us. What I do will not necessarily be something which is exclusive to me, that it does not affect my community. And so therefore, I think there's that responsibility that we all have to own up and say that we have to look at these things. And I guess, today's dialogue points to this. And I must appreciate NPMHR for the fact that this is a dialogue. This is not a one-way, speech that is going on. And as the chairperson said, that there will be dialogues later on where there will be questions and answers. I will look forward to that. Finally, my point is that we need to recognize the many stories of multiple perspectives in the story that we all belong to. We all belong to the same story. We all are going on the same journey. And yet there could be different perspectives to how this journey should be made. I think for too long, we have tried to enforce the idea of one history, one story. We have tried to enforce one history, one story. And I guess that is the thing which has impacted us, adversely. This is the thing which also is the root of all factionalism that happens, or the kinds of killings and the bloodshed that started from the beginning from all of us. Just because you disagree with your brother or your sister doesn't mean that you have to go and kill him, send a bullet to that person's head. And I think that has been the wrong, which you have not quite been able to do. And this is the kind of, the way which patriotism is also being tried to define. Whose patriotism? What kind of patriotism? That's the thing which we have not quite learned to. It could be one group's idea of patriotism, but that should not necessarily be enforced upon the whole group of people. There is always a space to come together and dialogue to move things to a better perspective. So in that sense, the inability to tolerate the opinion of the other, or also listen to the voices that may have different perspective to things that are generally of a common cause, is, I think, the root of killing, the root of violence that we are still fighting right from the start, and we are still battling these things which we look at. So as we see it, one of the biggest hurdles, even at the moment, for the Nagas is this, that we are not able to move forward because we have tried to terminate my opposition. We have not learned how to live with a different perspective to see. Perhaps, a few years down the line, who knows, yours might be not the best option. It could be another person's opinion. Why terminate that person's opinion when you still have the power? The irony of the Naga present is that because of so many wrongs against each other, so many wrongs done against each other in the past, hatred and thirst for vengeance is written large on the faces of many leaders even today, that the Christian virtue of forgiveness is far from being practiced in the land where magnificent churches still abound today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vio. That was a very powerful, challenging perspective. And I would expect there should be a lot of dialogue about this, because one history, one story is something which is dangerous. It has cost us, and we have to have many stories. Thank you. I want to invite James Wonglat, one of our older brothers from Arunachal Pradesh, to take his time now. Welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that true Christ of leadership is the willingness to place the needs of others above yourself. This is what Dr. P.S. Lauren did as a founding member of NPMHR, a legendary educationist, above all, a gentle and peace-loving human rights activist. He was very firm on the principle which he believed in. He truly was an iconic leader of the Nagas. The Oyanam outrages were a calculated violations of human rights in any decent democracy. It was a sad day in the history of Indian democracy. On July 2019, a human rights lawyer, Nandita Haskar, wrote, "I am sorry. The victims of Operation Bluebird operation will not get justice. Ever," exclaimed she. She continued to say that 12 volumes of evidence of large human rights violations, the people of nearly 30 villages of Senapati district are missing in the court. I'm very sad of what has happened, but more sad today I am because it's a press statement given by the Arunachal Pradesh Student Union, which is a very powerful student body in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. It gives its interview to this Hindustan, to Hindus, not Hindus. There are no Nagas in Arunachal Pradesh as claimed by NSCN. Legally, they are right. Please note, this is the same powerful student body, the Arunachal Student Union, who we managed to convince them to come to 2001 to participate on weaving vision at Itanagar on 1st and 2nd March. They supported the Nagas of Tirap, Chalang and Longding, and they could understand after a dialogue. The government does not recognize Nagas in Arunachal Pradesh as a scheduled tribe today, as per the Constitution of India. And I have not heard a single word from anyone protesting against this exclusion of the Nagas from the Arunachal Pradesh. Now, to add salt to this wound, in 2019 general election, you won't believe the Naga army of all factions supported a BJP candidate who is a non-Naga and got him elected against a lone Naga candidate. Can you believe it? Today, I'm participating on a theme, one history, many stories, as a Naga in spirit, but constitutionally, I have been removed as a Naga. However, I will be and continue to be a Naga till my last breath. With regards to the violations of human rights in Tirap and Chang in Naga area, it is no difference from what has happened in Oyanam. You won't believe we have documented Naga chiefs killed, Gamburas killed, Naga leaders killed, kidnapped. arrested from 1996 to 2019. This is a sad story. But if I start speaking on these stories, I think 10 minutes is not enough. Maybe 10 hours it may take. So forgive me, I will not go on detail on the specific cases, but we have a documentation on all this. Naga leaders would be picked up one fine night and will be accused of being an underground and terrorist. For what? For becoming a Christian. Can you believe it, that this has happened in the 21st century? The nomenclature of brutality and torture is same. I don't need to go to the specific. Our people has suffered as much as any one of you have done, has suffered. When I saw these sufferings, I was a student of Mount Hermon School, Darjeeling, in the 60s. I was appalled. So I started raising up these issues in 74, 72, 74. And in 75, I was arrested under the powerful law called Maintenance of Internal Security Act, MISA. For what? For helping, supporting legal aids to Baptist Christian being arrested in the country of his own. And please remember, I was not even a Christian at that time. In 1974, 75, I became a Catholic Christian in 1979. And lo and behold, the Assam Tribune created a front page, top heading, Wanglet arrested, linked with CIA and underground to create a buffer state in northeast state of India. I was shocked. I said, I will sue you of defamation unless you correct it. Of course, they did. The Assam Tribune corrected it again on this front page. The truth is, I have never met any undergrounds at that time. Neither did I meet any CIA agent of United States of America. I wish I had. I would have had a lot of money. And before I go further, I would just like to correct IO. She said that I was a minister of civil supplies. Civil supply has a lot of money. I was never a civil supply minister. I was just a supply and transport and aviation, helicopter service and things like that. That's just a minor correction. The Nagas of Arunachal learned about the demand for Naga independence when the NSCN-K entered Arunachal Pradesh, the Naga area. The NSCN-K first entered in mid-1990s, 94, 95, under the leadership of Chipu Menon, who was advisor and principal advisor and commander of the UT3. He rose to the rank of brigadier, and on March 2011, he was killed by NSCN-K themselves on the ground. The punishment was given on the ground that this brigadier was responsible for killing innocent Naga leaders of Tirap, Panchalang, and Longding, and also kidnapping and extortion. So that was the statement which the NSCN gave. Now the NSCN-IM subsequently came in around about 1999, 2000. Now then, obviously there'll be factional war. And in factional war, who suffers most? The civilians, both from the Indian security forces and also from both the factions. Nagas of TLC, Tirap Chalang was shocked at the method of some of these so-called freedom fighters or national armies were doing. And most of the Tirap and Chalang youth, college students who were studying in different parts of the country and also Arunachal, they did not want to be tagged with the name Naga. I had to take extra times to speak to them, to convince them our historical facts, which are written by Ahom Buronji and glimpses of Assam. These historical books are written somewhere in the medieval time when the Ahom kingdom was at its power in Assam. and different anthropologies who has written about people of Arunachal, Nokte, Wancho, Tangsas, and those people living in that particular as a Nagas. I explained to them, and many were convinced. Meanwhile, to serve the Nagas who were being arrested for trump-up charges, many of us thought that we had to have a forum. So we created human rights organization called Kirap Chalang Human Rights Organization, an indigenous Naga People's Forum of Arunachal Pradesh at Guwahati on 2001 with the help of one Artek Simre, Secretary of Northeast Student Organizations. Simre was a great help to us. And we formulated the human rights organizations to fight for the Nagas who, irrespective of whether he was a Ao or Tangkul or what you call any other tribes, including Noktes, Wanchos, and Tangsas. We helped, we assisted, we gave them legal aids. We fought with them, we fought for them so that they had some defense. Because it was next to impossible for people from Kohima and Dimapur and come and defend them. It was we who took up the responsibility to defend them. It was we who buried them. But subsequently, as you know, money plays more stronger than commitment or dedication. The organizations decided to hold a conference called Weaving Vision on 1st and 2nd of March 2001. That was a peak of anti-Naga movement in Arunachal Pradesh. During this meeting, during this conference, we requested Artek Simre to invite MPMHR, Naga mothers, and all the civil societies from Manipur and Nagaland. And they all came, participated. It was a historical moment for every one of us. I invited the Arunachal Pradesh Student Union, Global Human Rights Organization, ANSU, the powerful Nishi student organizations, NEFA human rights organizations, including former CMs, MLAs, ministers, ex-ministers, ex-MLAs, 20 village chiefs from Naga areas, and students and youth organization of all Naga areas of Arunachal Pradesh for 2 days conference. People were moved with our dialogue and they respected. And this Apsu was with us on that day on the movement for forming a vision, weaving a vision. Subsequently, I was removed as an MLA in 2004, and both Tricho and Indigenous People Forum, Naga Forum became defunct. However, we have documented evidence to show people who have been killed, people who we have fought for them, who we have released them from the atrocity of the power of the might of the government. To ease out the suffering of Nagas living in Arunachal Pradesh, I removed Operation Hurricane from Naga area, the police force, which has 2,400, and plus paramilitary forces on 7th August 2002, when I was given in charge of the Home Minister. And on 19th August 2002, I removed a motion. I moved a motion in the assembly to repeal a terror law called Arunachal Pradesh Control of Organized Crime. Now, this act can give you, sentence you, death sentence at the same time, life sentence. Such powerful this terror law was. Now, I have crossed 72, and now I don't intend to contest any election in Arunachal Pradesh. Not too long, we all will be weeded away, and I believe that is the finest invention of life, as Steve Jobs said. I have no regrets. I will be Naga till my death. My heritage cannot die, nor can it be taken away. With such commitment within my heart and in the interest of the future generation, I did accept the appointment as the convener of Naga Hoho in Arunachal Pradesh. What we need most today is not to dig up the misfortune we had. I don't want to tell you how many of my people were killed by both security forces and also by the Naga armies. I want to forget that. We are on a crossroad. The Nagas of all communities must learn to live as one people, as one nation, under one umbrella. Let us appreciate it. Let us appreciate, truly I appreciate the initiative of the NSCM for lighting a candle to bring peace in all Naga areas and urge them to come to the final conclusion of the Naga Peace Accord. In all dialogues, there will be negotiation and some issues will be inconclusive, which I believe can be amended during the passage of times. If final accord is signed, there will be no more infamous Operation Bluebird, nor will there be Naga killing a Naga. The next 10 years will be the year of the agricultural revolution. Through modern farming, using hybrid technology, drones, ultra-modern machineries, robotization, in short, smart farming. Can Naga take this advantage and revolutionize the Northeast economy and also supply it to Southeast Asia and also to the mainland India? Can we do it? Naga country is blessed with huge and abundant land. We only need idea, innovation, and to be productive. And this can only happen if there is peace. We urgently need to be critical and be critic where we have gone wrong. Kutnalim.
Thank you. I think I am also much educated through what I heard right now. And there will be questions with regard to the fact that there needs to be a solution and we have to move forward and we have to take what we can. There may be amendments in future. On that hangs a lot of the narrative that is presently on, and I expect that that should be something which people would be wanting to dialogue on. I cannot thank you enough, Mr. Wonglat. Thank you very much. I want to now give time to Kegwehun Tep, the president of Naga Students Federation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear us? Yes.
Yes, yes.
Please go ahead.
At the very outset, I, on behalf of the Naga Students Fraternity, would like to thank NPM HR for giving me this opportunity to share the challenges and aspirations of the youth. This is a great opportunity for me to be in the midst of these intellectuals and Naga patriots. I not dwell much on the narration of stories, but taking the opportunity, I want to focus more on the challenges being faced by young leaders, young Naga people, as well as the aspirations of the Naga youths. As we all know that today is a very emotional day to all of us. I, on behalf of the Naga students family, would like to pay our homage and honor to men and women of the past who have laid down their lives at the altar of democracy, defending the rights and of our existence as the free people 34 years ago in the year 1987. By the way, I'm from Kohima, and the process of our discussion, I have found my network fluctuating, so you may be interrupted because of my network, but kindly bear with me because I'm not going to take much time. If we remember Oinam, I, as young leader, I wish to rephrase in the unforgettable words of Charles Dickens, and I quote, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair." It was a time when the aspirations, existence of the Naga people have been cast upon the shadows of political despairs and uncertainty. Today, I want to challenge, as well as I feel, that Naga society, every Naga leaders have to able to clear and have to able to clean our mirror in order to have a clear vision towards our Naga cause for self-determination. Because I have seen a lot of which is disuniting the Nagas. Not only the artificial boundaries which has been or which has divided the Nagas, but we have seen lots of self-centered Naga leaders who have been dividing the Nagas. And this is at the moment. As we are all aware that through the sacrifices and at the heavy price being bared by the blood, through the martyrdom of the sons and daughters of the soil, our aspirations and our hope are renewed once again with the strengthened sense of the today. Today, we the youth and younger generation shall remain indebted forever for the supreme sacrifices. It is with great pain in our hearts, young people, that we acknowledge there is no greater sacrifice or nobler than laying down one's life defending our identity and for the freedom for any forceful subjugation. As we remember the sacrifices made during the Oinam, their blood and tears will continue to inspire generations to come in the temple of our memories. Once again, we convey our homage and honor to the leaders and to the people who have sacrificed. And also taking this opportunity, if I fail to remember the sacrifice and the contribution made by Dr. Lorin towards the Naga people, particularly towards the young people, it will be incomplete on our part. I, on behalf of the Naga students family, would also like to remember and acknowledge the contributions of late Dr. Lorin for his contribution, particularly towards the students and young Naga people. Today, our Naga society is in the verge of self-destruction because of tribalism, regionalism, and fractionalism, which have destroyed the credibility of our people. We have segregated ourselves based on our own selfish interests, egos. If I mention egos, that is particularly the self-centered and self-interest leaders and personal differences. Today, we bluntly distinguish ourselves based on territorial lines as Southern Nagas, Northern Nagas, Eastern Nagas, Western Nagas, where I feel one young Naga feel that there is only one Naga and vice versa. So we cannot afford to further divide ourselves today. And I think Naga intellectuals, particularly Naga intellectuals and the seniors of today, have to able to educate young leaders and young youth. We have we are not only separated by artificial boundaries, but we are also divided by shadow lines in our narrow minds, and within the confinement of our own tribe, we are divided. Not only regionalism and fractionalism, but our tribalism, the tribalism which we are practicing and which we can see today has further divided the Nagas today. And I personally feel that if we want to unite the Nagas, I think we have to come out from our tribal cocoon and we have to feel, as I have mentioned, that we have only one Naga and we are one Naga. The Naga people are faced with a most challenging task to defend our people, not only from outside forces, but but from the narrow mindset of our people. Today, I feel that, as I repeat again, we are divided because of tribalism and because of our narrow mindset towards ourselves, which is why not only the outside forces which is dividing the Nagas today, but it is within ourselves which is further dividing our Naga society today, where we all have to clean our mirror and we all have to able to see ourselves to have one vision as one Naga. And I personally feel that as a young leader, the way forward for the Naga people lies in reviving the consciousness of the younger generation towards our common ancestry and in our common welfare, in educating the youths about the ethos, the pains, the struggles, and the collective aspirations of our people, which our elders and visionary leaders have stood for, while ushering them to value the well-being of one another, irrespective of tribes and regions, in fostering unity among our people if we truly desire to attain our goal. I think we have to able to foster unity among our people if we truly desire to attain our goal, that is one Naga. As we are all aware, where I don't have to mention, but for more than 7 decades, though our history goes beyond, we have asserted, particularly the Naga Students Federation, ever since its establishment from the year 1947, we have asserted our rights for political liberation and to establish our rightful identity. The Naga people, I think, have to able to take this decisive stand on question of peace and dialogue, reconciliation and healing, governance and accountability, development, and in every other aspects in order to build a defined and concrete Naga future. We must also, I feel that Naga society also have to carry forward the very qualities which our fathers and our leaders in the past have fought to preserve for our generation and the generation that we are yet to witness. The contribution of all sections of Naga people in upholding the Naga identity and in the political, social, and cultural identity of the Naga people equals to any other Naga tribes in merit, which is why Nagas are one today. I feel that we have to able to embark upon a historic crossroad in the journey of our people in defense of our rights, where NPMHR have been rightly pursuing at the moment. And we want to congratulate MPMHR for the efforts been made so far. And in our quiz to restore honor of the Naga people, what culminated as a national movement is now slowly losing impetus into polarized camps, factions, and groups. Based on tribal and territorial lines, we have threatened, I think, which have threatened the very fabric and the existence of our people today. As I have clearly stated, I will be dwelling on the challenges where the youths today, as well as the students today, are facing. I think we are dividing within ourselves, where those are some of the challenges which in our hand, which has to be immediately resolved in order to be one Naga, or in order to consider ourselves as one another, one Naga. As a young leader, I also feel that at this juncture, we cannot afford or allow the bitterness of the past to dictate the course of our future. So much damage has been done, but today, I think we have to able to set aside the bitterness, the past bitterness, which had happened within our family. Today, the younger generation yearns to live in peace as we aspire to live as one nation for self-determination. We are, once again, I said, yearned to live in peace at par with the rest of the world, with the rest of the other countries, with the rest of the other nation. And the only way forward, I feel, is that to realize this common hope is to learn to accommodate each other, setting aside all egos, past differences, bitterness, and enmity among the various Naga tribes, groups, factions, and other barriers. I think we have to be able to come together. That is what young Naga leader I personally feel. I think we have to step out from the parameter of our confinement and make collective efforts. I think we have to be able to come together to make a collective efforts to bring about a life of dignity and the shared purpose of peaceful coexistence and respectful relationship within our own Naga people, within our own family, and within our neighbors. I think to bring together Nagas and to live together as one Naga, I think we also have to know how to able to live in harmony with our neighbors, where I think we all have to ponder upon. The students community and the youths, I think, have a vast role to play. And also I feel that the students community today at this point of time is considered or is an ambassador of goodwill and understanding to help and create harmonious environment where respect, democracy, justice, and peace are the cornerstones of relationship amongst ourselves and with those living in close proximity with us. I feel we must I think have to able to respect each other's history and basic accept each other difference and value the common interest so as to establish a secured future. I think our lives we intertwined with those people living among us and around us, the past, the present, and the future. Let us strive to build a future where the entire regions will strive together in harmony. Lastly, but not the least, I, as the president of the Naga Students Federation, taking this opportunity as I see many young Naga scholars attending this this gathering, this meeting, I also would like to pose certain questions. I think many young Naga students, I should say, or many young Naga leaders have forsaken our history today. Not because they don't know the history, but it is because of the failure of, I think, the intellectuals today, where we are failing to impart the history which our fathers and our leaders have sacrificed. So I want to particularly encourage the Naga scholars to bring out or bring lots of publications based on Naga history, so that young leaders, young people, and young students can able to read and follow us in this journey ahead of us. And also taking this opportunity, I think the only way forward and the only way to bring the spirit of patriotism or to instill in the hearts of young students today is to, I think, educate them. And I think we are failing to do that. So I think Naga scholars, particularly the Naga scholars and publishers, have a lot of role to play in order to bring the spirit of patriotism and the spirit of oneness among our Naga society. So I taking this opportunity, I want to particularly once again urge Naga scholars particularly to bring out with lots of publications and with lots of books, so that we can able to impart or we can able to educate our young Nagas, and we'll be looking forward for more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kegwehon Dep. I recall the excitement of a young student who had gone for one of the NSF annual conference to Ukhrul, when NSF held its general conference in Ukhrul. And when the young person returned to Nagaland, this was what she uttered. They are just like us. And I just thought that even amongst ourselves, we are strangers. The exposure between Nagas and Nagas, and what Mr. Wanglat had been speaking about, that the kind of denial of even the Naga name being identified correctly. I think this is something which NSF is in a powerful and well-poised position to do, which is to bring about that kind of further exposure, so that we don't hear narratives from without, but the narratives are from within. And our narratives will drive that vision you're talking about of reconciliation of one Naga family without artificial boundaries. Thank you very much. I think we have heard challenges. We have heard the kind of stories which are from different parts of the Naga homeland. And I think it is already making us think in a new way. And we will go on now to our interactive session. For this, I ask that you leave questions in the chat box if you have any questions. And I hope you have questions which are on what we have been talking about. And if you want, then you can also speak out, and we will also entertain it if you should share or comment live. So I open this interaction session. It's a dialogue. This is not something which we have three panelists and their words of whatever they have pondered and shared with us, whatever they have offered to us of their experiences, whatever they have said about future challenges and the present in which we live. I think we want to talk more about this. So let's open up and let us have this interaction. So I open the floor to those who would like to ask anything from our panelists and what has been said.
And just to add one more thing, you may also pose, when you ask your questions, you may address them to, particular speakers as well.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I'm part of the organizers, but can I start this by asking a question?
Akam, we
Yeah.
would welcome you to be the one to bring the first question. Please go ahead.
Okay. So is Ketep still here? I would actually,
Yes.
yeah? Okay, good, great.
Yes.
I actually wanted to
Yes,
know from you, like, since, like on the ground level, what are, like, is there any friction between tribes, and how do you sense it? I mean, what is your experience regarding this? You were talking about this unity, and yeah, I mean, we all heard you speak. So you being on the ground as a student leader, what has been your experience regarding unity or disunity among students?
Thank you. Anyway, my mirror is quite dark because we don't have current in Kohima. I see. When I talk about students, or when I talk about family of Naga Students at the moment, under the constitution of the Naga Students Federation, we have 17 affiliated tribal communities. And one thing which really distracted me in recent concluded Naga Students Federation conference as well as election was I personally felt that the election system of the Students Federation, I think, is further dividing the unity of the federation. That is what I feel. And when I am to look beyond that, as we are all aware how our Eastern Naga Students Federation walked out from the family of Naga Students Federation many years back. And so also as a student leader in my observation, and as well as in my short experience, there were two city-based Naga Students Union came and approached my office just 2 weeks back, and were confused whether to include our Naga students family from Arunachal, Assam, and Manipur to be part of Naga Students Union, where I cannot mention the name of the union, but a city-based students union. So what I'm trying to say is, I think we have to able to educate our young brothers. Otherwise, I see very less ray of hope in uniting the Nagas. And answer to this, let me also take this opportunity to share my few experience. I always personally, I since childhood as one young leader, I felt that I'm patriotic Naga, but I never looked beyond Nagaland until I put my foot in the office of the Students Federation. After I put my foot in the office of the Students Federation, I came to realize the unity of the Nagas, as well as I came to realize the importance of each and every Naga family, which has been dividing with the artificial boundary. So I think in order to, I think this is a very question where I may take time, but in that manner, I think I can able to answer you. Thank you.
I think Ayao is not disposed yet. Yes, so let's continue. Is there anyone else who has any questions? Oh, Ayao's back. Okay.
Yes.
Ayo?
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Akam. Yeah. I think we have listened to what has just been replied by Kegbehon. And I think that is the reality, that there is a division that is sought to be made at many levels of the Naga unity, of the Naga people, of the Naga youth, of the Naga women. And what you have narrated is something which I have not been there that happened, but I can believe that such things are afoot. And we need to have a clearer vision, as you yourself were saying a little earlier, Kegwehon. We need to clear our vision to understand, if we are one family, then we cannot have central people, peripheral people, Nagas who are somewhere on the boundaries and some who are there in the center. This is what is killing us. And what we will see in these so-called peace times is a lot. How shall we withstand the onslaught? This is what each of us have to ask ourselves personally, but we have to be ready also as one people. I think there should be more questions that should come, and we are allowing this time hard questions, questions that are sensitive, but it comes from a need for us to understand our narrative much more clearly in order to see we are getting to where we want to go as one family. So with that perspective in mind, we do invite questions from what has been said, from what has our panelists have spoken out. Yes, anybody?
There are two questions in the chat box.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can
So
you-
one is, would you
Yes.
like to read them out, or should I?
Yes, Akam, read them out.
Okay. This is a question posed by Wung, but not addressed to any speaker in particular. Actually, I think if Mr. James is still here, that might be. I think it's best addressed by him.
You
So
can
James,
tell us the question.
Yeah. Why can't Naga history be introduced into the Naga inhabited areas in schools? So yes, could you hear that? Should I repeat?
No, I understood. Akam,
Okay.
I understood what you're saying.
Okay.
That's a very interesting question. Naga history need to be, educated, particularly, I would say, in Naga area of Arunachal Pradesh. As I have told you that the Nagas of because I knew, because I had friends and relatives, and even the son of General Keto and others, they were studying with me. They were, of course, juniors to me. So I knew about the Naga movement, but 99.9% of the people in Naga area has very vague knowledge about the Naga history movement. So that's a very good proposal to introduce the Naga history. But as I told you, Akam, the word Naga has already been removed as a scheduled tribe from the constitutional statutory book of our country, of India. So I don't know how to go about it right now.
Now, if I may be allowed to add a little bit on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Come in, please. Yes.
Yeah. So I think just 2 points. The first is, yes, there should be scope for our children, generations to be introduced to Naga history. Of course, even though that is a government policy, I think the fault line lies in the fact that we see many narratives that has come so far has told us that we have nothing to do with India. You know, that is sort of kind of question that continues to be hammered down on us. So we have nothing to do with India's form of education. We don't have to do anything with the policy of the government, blah, blah, all those kind of things. And I think that is adversely affecting what policy should be framed. And that is also the reason why the government perhaps have not taken proactive steps in introducing textbooks which are relevant to us. It is not just about history, it could be culture. But I see now that some schools in Nagaland are taking steps forward to actually introduce even books written by Nagas to talk about culture, our stories. And these are important steps. These should have been done long back. The government should be more proactive. Our organizations should have been more proactive. One of the fault line, I think, is also that Nagas for a long time have been told that if we have the solution, everything will fall into place. And I think that is such a rubbish statement that we should have by now debunk that statement. Because political solution is not the panacea to all evils in the society. We have now too many evils in the society which we cannot actually bring about a suitable solution just by a political solution. And I think we've been sold that narrative that political solution is the solution to all the evils, solution to all the evils in the society. What would happen tomorrow if the solution comes? I'm afraid there'll be more bloodshed, because of so many kinds of different contradicting issues that have come into the thing. And at the same time, you see our society, our organizations, even our civil society organizations, are termed as civil organizations and yet behave political. I think that is a wrong way of behaving. If it is civil organization, why take on? If you look at, of course, NSF, I understand, is an organization which is instituted to be political, but not Naga women, not Naga NPO, other things. Of course, those are also there, but there are several other civil society organizations which can actually look at so many other issues in a society. And yet they have left most of these things and take on politics as the most important thing. For most people, they look upon this kind of organization as a stepping stone towards a larger political involvement. And I think that is also the reason why we are so undone. Perhaps my statement is a bit strong, but I suppose that is one problem.
Thank you. Thank you to both our panelists. I think the very fact that any post which gives us some ability to have some earning and also a position is far more important today to the average Naga than our aspiration as a people. The Naga in the 21st century is a very torn person. And I think we are going to have to contend with many of the new things which the 21st century challenges us with. This is because we cannot let go of our past. We don't need to let go of our past, but there is also the need for us, along with the continuity and the richness of what our traditions and our forefathers have given us, the need to grapple with many new institutions, which we as Nagas did not grapple with before. And it is bringing about many problems that are also visible, where people are, at the end of the day, not really interested in ideals, are foregoing principles for what can be seen and what can be enjoyed in the here and now. And so we want to continue to look at this dialogue today about many stories and about the fact that what our panelists had said before, that there is great importance to listening to individual stories, to be objective in what we are pursuing. And so there is the need for us also to open up more to each other, be more tolerant is one word that has been used by Mr. Tepp, to be able to also see the needs of other people around us, even our neighbors. So let us continue to talk about what the panelists have already spoken on, and let us look towards the vision that we have in our hearts. So I would invite more questions, and let us make this time of interaction a very good one by bringing questions to any of our panelists.
There is 2 more questions in the chat box.
Yes, Akam, can you continue to read them out?
Okay. So there's another question directed towards Ketep from Nutso. Nutso would like to ask him about the statement made by James regarding our Naga community in Arunachal, where the Nagas were being denied, I guess, their identity, their right to have, a student's body, to form political bodies or students' bodies in Arunachal. So I guess this would be again best addressed by both of them. First, I guess, since it's being directly addressed towards KTEP, but then I think James would be it would be good to hear from him as well.
Yeah,
Akam, may I just ask, if you have the question, can you just read it out once?
So okay, I'm paraphrasing because
yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so it goes like this. I would like to ask the NSF president about the statement mentioned by James regarding our Naga community in Arunachal Pradesh, where the Nagas were denied by the students' body in Arunachal. So,
all right.
Can I answer this?
Yes, please. I think, yeah, please.
I think the gentleman who has asked, I think he has misconceived or misunderstood what I was trying to say. What I was saying is that all Arunachal Pradesh Student Union, which is the student body of the state, has made a statement, and Hindu published it, stating there is no Naga in Arunachal Pradesh. And also the RGU professors has also been giving a lot of writes up, Professor Naniba, that there is no Naga in Arunachal Pradesh. What I was trying to say is that these people are not too far wrong, because the constitution has been amended by the present on 2019 by the present government, stating that they have removed the word Naga. Instead, they have put Nokte, Wancho, Tutsa, and Wancho. Now, I had no objection in they putting up this specific name, but it should have been Naga tribes of Nokte, Wancho, Tangcha, and Tutsa. The word Naga has been deliberately removed. That is the Government of India's plan, maybe. So that is how it is. That's why the professor of Rajiv Gandhi University, and also all Arunachal Student Union president, they have stated on a question saying that there is no Naga in Arunachal Pradesh as demanded by the NSCN. This is the statement given by the student body.
Mhm. But I think the concern that is being mentioned, the concern that is coming out is that the word Naga having been purposely removed, which is in order to perhaps show a picture that there are no Nagas in Arunachal Pradesh, is extremely mischievous, to just say it in a mild way. And it's something for which we do need to assert our identity as Nagas. Mr. Wonglet, this is also a problem in Manipur, where the Manipur government would not like to use the word Naga everywhere for the Naga tribes. There are many reasons for that. Some are very obvious reasons, but the insistence on our common name, the Nagas, I think, is also one way our narrative can be driven, and it would help us in our quest to live as one people. Whether Mr. Tepp would like to add anything to this? Kegwehon, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you once again for the time. Regarding this question, I am sure I have 2-3 of my seniors who are also attending this meeting where they would be the right person. However, according at the moment, the federation, as mentioned earlier, we have 17 units where we also have subordinate bodies from Arunachal Pradesh, from Assam, from whatever activities federation organs, they are also very much part of us, part of the Naga Students Federation, and they are never secluded or excluded event or in any activities of the federation. I don't know how far is the understanding of Arunachal considered, and then very Naga family in Arunachal are part of the Naga, and at all we have to. I rather suggest my seniors to please this question.
Is there anyone who would like to add anything on this? We'll give a few minutes for that. If there's no one, let us use our time to go forward to the next question.
So,
Akam, may
yeah, the next question is actually addressed towards us, but should we, there are a number of questions now, so should we address this one, which is regarding the NPMHR, or go on to the next one? Rest of the members, can you see in the chat box? Should we answer this now or later? Let Vio and James
Yes.
answer.
Yes, I think we can go on to the ones which are addressed to our panelists, or they can
Panelists
be
first.
answered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is one question for Vio. Nagas don't read their own history books. So what are your suggestions, for promoting or encouraging youth to learn their own history? Okay, that's for Vio. And for James, how can we younger Nagas be more inclusive and challenge the colonial mess division that we see in, amongst the Naga communities in Assam, Myanmar, Manipur.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
is,
all right.
should I repeat anything?
No,
Okay.
that's okay. I can also
Okay.
see the question.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
you, Pang, for asking that question. I think that's an important question. But I would also
Yes.
start by saying that Nagas are not, of the culture of reading. Not just history books, but also all kinds of books. We don't even read, like I mentioned earlier, that many people don't even read newspapers, which comes to them on a daily basis, where they pass on the road. They don't even, go and buy. So we rely more on the word of mouth. And perhaps that is also the reason why there is a tendency to spread rumor much faster in our society, because the word of mouth, and now perhaps the extension of the word of mouth, which is the social media, continues to wreak a sense of havoc in this sense. But I understand that, if I'm not wrong, a couple of years back, I came to understand that in the graduate level, one or two books written by Nagas have been introduced in Nagaland University. I stand here, willing to be corrected if I'm wrong. But again, even in the school level, the problem with our education system is also that our education, the modern education system that came to the Nagas and many oral society, is that it is a written-based education system that came to us. And therefore, what is available in the written, material is often given for study in school. And perhaps that is also the reason why it has not quite gone into the curriculums, which should have the syllabuses that are framed. Today, of course, we have tribal languages which are introduced as subjects. And while there should be even more languages in Nagaland University, we have only one Tenedi, one language department, Tenedi. We have many other advanced languages, Lotha, Ao, even in Nagaland University I'm talking about. Go to Manipur, there should have been more departments set up for Tangkhul, or let's say, other kind of languages which are much more advanced in the way that their written productions are concerned. And yet at the same time, I think it is also this is where I would also blame the state governments for not taking proactive role, and the public organizations, the Naga public organizations, for not stressing on this aspect of education. Because like I said earlier, that our organizations automatically become political organizations. We only look for solution. And again, this solution is a very idealistic one. We have a nationalism which is very idealistic often, and again, which does not often fit into the present. Before we attain this, what are we supposed to do? And what is happening is that until we attain this independence or whatever things we imagine, we are only consuming which is provided for us. And these are histories that does not actually relate to our own culture and history. And that is the unfortunate part, I guess, because what should have been taught to our younger children, we only learn when we are in the research level. Personally, speaking from my personal experience, I started taking interest in researching on our culture only when I'm at the research level. It's a shame to say that, but it will also be the same thing for many other younger generations, because unless student bodies like the NSF or other kind of organizations take active role in promoting cultures and not just focus on politics. Like I said, I'm not adverse to political solution. Please don't mistake me here. What I'm saying is that political solution will not bring about one-time solution to all the problems in our society. There are so many other things which we need to attend to. And I guess this is also the reason why the writer Istirin Kiri also said that war silences many other narratives. There are lots of narratives which have been silenced by war, and these wars have come to us in different forms. Let's talk about Japanese war, or even our Indo-Naga war, which is going on for the last 70, 60, 70 years. And because of that engrossed moment of engaging with war, we have forgotten about even our own culture. We have not begun to actually dig deeper into listen to our older people, and our older people are vanishing. Where are our stories? They are our libraries, and they are vanishing by the day. And for me as a person from the field of literature, I take much interest in going into understanding what are these stories that needs to be told and what are to be preserved. And yet, I think there is a need to actually inculcate and also educate the younger lot that we have nothing to be ashamed of our own culture, which many people are actually. We have no problem kind of donning ourselves as Americans or Koreans. The Korean wave is such a big hit now, but we have hesitancy to actually talk and speak about our own culture. And I think this is also part of the cultural colonial baggages. Yes, that is also there, but we cannot completely blame the colonial enterprise for all the ills that are there. Often that is the post-colonial paradigm that we often look at. We blame the colonials for all the ills in the post-colonial world, which is not the case. We also have our own undoings. And I think our civil organizations have not done so much, and also our governments, have not done much in this aspect. Instead of just pursuing political peace time and again, while there are organizations which legitimately should pursue political peace, NPMHR is one. We should pursue active political involvement. But many other organizations, even if I don't name, need not necessarily be following the same footstep as NPMHR. There has to be different angles of focus so that society progresses in different ways, and which is not happening in our society. I guess this is also the reason why we have the problem of not being able to educate our people with our culture, history, politics, and our ways of life. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's something which is good food for thought. It's something which personally I agree with wholly with what has just been said by Dr. Vyo. There is a second part to that question. Akam, would you like to read it out?
Yeah, the second part is addressed to James. So it
Yes.
says, how can we younger Nagas be more inclusive and also challenge the colonial mess, the division that we see amongst Nagas in Assam, Myanmar, and Manipur? So,
Yeah. Akam, before I just go to the core questions that you have asked, I may just like to give my interjunction to the doctor, the professor, what he has said. It's absolutely ideal statement that the culture, the books, and all these things should all be together. From right from Ukrul to right to Pongcho Waka and all those places. That's beautiful. Now, I believe this thing can happen only when there is a peace accord signed. Then we will have our instrument, administrative instrument, where this can be enforced. Before that, it is a wishful thinking, I would say, because each state has its own priorities. And having said that, I again believe that every organization, whether it's a mother's organizations or whatever, it has a political touch. Everything has a political, even the student unions has a political touch. So politics is essence of life. You cannot go away with politics. So what I would, emphasize is that let us appeal to the NSCN leaderships to go for an early accord, and then there will be peace, and all what you're saying will surely be part of our agenda. Now, as regards to the question, It's a very interesting question. For right now, say for example, in Eastern Naga area or Arunachal for that matter, Naga area, the NSF has not been able to conduct one single meeting, though we have NSF president and general secretaries and so forth. The reason being, that people in that area has not been able to, we have not been able to convince them, for reason best known to many of those who are involved in Eastern Naga area. Unless we remove that particular blockade, I think NSF wanted to have one meeting at Deomali, but that did not materialize. And I believe there General Atem was invited as a chief guest or something like that. And this did not happen. This did not, the meeting could not take place. So the crux of the question that the gentleman gave is that how can younger generation come to Eastern Naga? That is, you have to continue coming. You have to keep on meeting with NSF General Secretary. You have to interact with NSF President. And just as we have done, despite there was a hue and cry, there was Apkoka law, there was entire, the government missionaries was against us. We conducted through MPMHR also came. I think Korome was the, Ningalung Korme was the president at that time. The Naga mothers, everybody, right from Manipur Naga Council, they all came. We had a huge 2 days mind-boggling discussion. We had theme discussion, we had cultural discussion, we had need discussion, we had fear discussion. So this was very important issues. Now somebody has to take the lead. That is the NSF or MPMHR or Naga woman. Recently, of course, Nagal movement advisor Rose, she went to Naga area and she went and helped those people whose entire village was burned out. So the initiative has to come from people who are asking this question.
Thank you. I think there are more questions that I can see. And what our panelist has just said may also be what will help to answer these questions about we ourselves taking the initiative. Akam, can you read one of the next questions? This is to NSF.
Okay. There are actually, let me combine two
Yes.
questions at the same time.
Yes.
So, KTEP, both of these are addressed to KTEP. So, our dear NSF, our formation is great and the structure is interesting, but it's rigid and it's been the same since its initiation. How can we expand the youth movement? And this person believes that, with all due respect, NSF is okay. One second. I mean, okay. Let me just read it out as it's been written. I mean, with respect, and no way believe the NSF is failing, but I want to hear what's the future. What are future ideas to tackle the new multi-layered challenges that are breeding? Okay, that's the first question. And also, again addressed to KTEP, talking about unity, NSF is no longer suggestive of its name, in that many or most Naga tribes are either not registered or have pulled out of it. So what are the challenges that it poses, and what is the way forward according to you? So these are both questions addressed to KTEP.
Yes. Mr. Ketep, I hope your connection is okay. Oh. It sounds like a very bad connection. Hello, please come in. Can you hear us?
Must be some network issues.
Kegwehan Tep?
I think we can ask the next question.
All right, let's go ahead with the next one and return to this if his connection gets good.
Okay. This particular question is not. Okay, it's not. It's for no one in particular, no particular speaker, but I think again both Veo and James would be best suited to answer this. With the arrival of with the powerful arrival of digital media, I guess, digital media to disseminate ideas at a popular level, are Nagas failing to recognize this possibility to disseminate ideas, connect Naga issues at the mass level using popular platforms, and to go beyond small confinement, intellectually, not only in academia. Yeah. So the power of digital media and platforms to connect us, our communities, and to disseminate our ideas. So, any comments on this?
Just one comment on this. Digital is interesting, fantastic. It's a way to communicate, just as all we are communicating with each other. At the same time, it has its liabilities also. I know, I'm sure, Akam, you must be reading the Facebook of Nagamira, Eastern Nagamira. The youths there, what they write, you have been reading that. So it will disseminate from both angles. Now, the aspect of until and unless we have a person-to-person touch is very important. Having said that, yes, digital communication through selective, like MPMHR may have a special page, or NSF should have a special page and get connected to the people in Eastern Naga area, so that they learn more about, the Naga history. That's what I can say.
Yeah, I think, like James said, the digital dissemination of knowledge is certainly here for us to stay. And yet at the same time, I don't think there is a lack of discussions on the digital platforms. Only that, I find a bit of a problem when we Nagas, mostly because I'm also in many WhatsApp Naga groups and WhatsApp in that groups sort of thing. What is happening again is that these digital spaces are also platforms to actually, disseminate, in most cases, ideas where men only discourse. I find where there are men and women together, and yet, there's a complete silence of women. I think that is also one reason where we can actually look at. I guess it is also patriarchy at play. Again, I think these digital platforms are also areas where, patriarchy easily pervade into our spaces, because it is often men who actually seemingly have more time to actually engage on social media. Women perhaps are more engaged in doing some serious and constructive stuff. Men have nothing to do but just go and abuse each other. That's the sort of thing which we find. Most of the groups are only men, and yet when there is a serious topic coming up, there is a complete silence of a group of people who are otherwise very active. So it is a very challenging area of how we use the digital platform. But I think it is not a lack of it. At the same time, there is, I think, the only lack which I find is the lack of being, well moderated to let the discussion flow in different, intended way. Because often you find in Facebooks, you talk about, Nagas and Eastern Nagas, Western Nagas, and whatever Nagas, you end up abusing each other. And those are the things where you don't necessarily go into it, and I mean, we have nothing to do with all those sort of things, because there's so much of, people who are too less informed. And I think that is where I come back to the thing again. Yes, we look for an idealist accord where we will have finally a settled peace once and for all. I think that is what we all look forward to. But until that time comes, what do we do? And I think that is the challenge which we all are living. Until that time, how then should we live? And I think we're not being able to live at a time understanding our own culture. This is where I think, education system, until the solution comes, we've been learning only people's history. Only until solution comes, we've been only reading about British, India, we ourselves forget about the rest of India. We protest that, Northeast is not in the syllabus of NCERT. That's another angle to look at it. But we ourselves, our schools have lots of potential to actually introduce, maybe not at the board level, but in the initial level, schools have lots of, and I know that they have lots of autonomy to actually introduce several courses. And I think our schools, educationists, should really take this challenge of the availability of, perhaps if there are good works by Nagas already there, I think those should be introduced incorporated into the syllabus, so that people are made aware about these things. It's not that works written by Nagas are not available. Actually, there are lots by now, even though, of course, there are still lots of areas which needs to be worked upon. And yet, I think not just in the digital platform, but also in other means of communication, we certainly have areas, except that, our, again, over focus on political settlement somehow has overshadowed many other possibilities and potentials in our society. And the changes are so fast. Digital society is here to stay. And we have the next generation is called the digital natives. And the digital natives will not read books. They will, in the sense of the hard copy book, where you can smell the smell of the papers. They're all glued into all these things. I don't know what is the next step for the Nagas. Before we could realize one thing, something has been thrown upon us to actually tackle.
Yes.
That's one challenge.
Very true. Well put. I think the next question should also be put to Dr. Pao. The question about Nagas don't read. Would you like to read that out?
Okay, all right. So Veo, this is again for you. Is it possible that Nagas don't read because it has something to do with our tradition of orality? So should the focus then be dedicated to revitalizing our oral traditions? Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, again, when I made that statement, Nagas don't read. Of course, it is a general statement. It doesn't mean that, the rest of us who are here don't read. We all read. But, generally speaking, we are from an oral culture, and we rely on words that are spread through the word of mouth. When something is, happening somewhere else, we rely on it. And I guess for a long time, those sort of things, including the radio, has helped us to actually keep up those momentums. But it certainly is because we are from an oral culture that reading is not something that comes as an intuitive thing for us. That certainly is there. But at the same time, it is not to say that that is a negative thing. We have a lot of things which actually, like the critic Walter Ong also says that writing and orality are not necessarily opposed to each other. Actually, in fact, they need to be seen as a continuity of realizing human consciousness. To that, what he meant to say is that, you see, even writing has to be realized by performing that oral reading, right? You read the story to your children, but that book is already written. So there is an act which is being performed, which is very much a part of our culture. Our culture, oral culture, is being performed when you tell the story. And storytellers have the talent to actually tell a story in a very interesting way. Even if you have heard it 10 times, you still want to listen to it, because the gift of the storyteller can help us be enamored by the way that is told. And as a parent, when I read the story to my kids, they have a sense of heightened excitement every time the story is being read to, even though it is nothing new for me as a parent to read to. So when we look at orality and writing, often we look at it as though those are two diagonally apart. I mean, they are not necessarily opposed to each other. I think there is a need to actually let those two supplement each other. What we are doing, many Nagas are now writing, but this writing can also have a lot of potential to actually be performed. Yes, I know that, I think Nagas may not be in many ways be theatrical as the way Shakespeare would like to see being looked at upon. But again, we need not necessarily be influenced by what the West defines, understanding, writing is about. And it is not, writing is not an art to be taught by one particular person. I think that's what we also need to understand. And that's something which we actually look at. We are so, and I guess this is also the reason why we see a lot of disjunctions with many people, because we think that, we can learn somebody with all the stylistics of writings. But again, in doing that, we end up aping people. We become mimics of another person. And in that sense, colonial mimics in one way. But what you also find is that writing can comfortably become a part of our culture when you write about our own culture, which are very educative to the whole thing. And there are lots of terminologies which are lost without us actually being able to negotiate with all these things. I think rather than seeing as a threat when all these new things come, digital or other things, we can perhaps take it as opportunities to actually look at it. Our oral culture needs to also survive. And one of the ways to actually survive is to actually archive. And archiving through perhaps letting the older folks tell the stories, store them for younger generation to actually see it. And I think writing can be one way of archiving. There can be perhaps other ways of archiving. We have lots of material cultures, which many young generations will not be able to look back at. But I think there is still nothing, what I mean to say is that not everything is lost. There are still some things which can be reconstructed, because cultures are about reconstructions. And I think that we can still look at things where there are scopes for rebuilding, reconstructing, and perhaps reviving some of the issues and the problems and the challenges we have.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful listening to our panelists. And I think the way forward is not just a single way. There is multiplicity in the ways in which we move forward, and we are talking about those. I would request our panelists to kindly stay with us, because we do have more questions. And Akam, may I request you to read out the next question?
Okay. Okay, there was a question we missed somewhere in between.
Yes, in between.
Okay, but this is for KTEP again, who has network problems. In fact, I think he's left. Yeah, you'll have to go ahead.
There is the question to MPMHR, of course.
No, there's another one by Zimik.
Yes.
Okay. Again, this is for anyone to answer. Can you give some thoughts on customs unions? That is, community-based free trading environment. and to a great extent, it can create socio-cultural, economic and educational, emotional unification amongst the Nagas. So, any thoughts on this? On a customs union between, I guess, the Naga, communities. Would anyone like to care to comment on this?
I don't have much answer to that. I guess Akam can give some perspective because you're in economics, or perhaps some expert,
Yeah.
or Sir James might have some ideas.
Maybe Sir James first? Would you like to go ahead first? Or should I? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, for Jimmick, I think it's a very good thought. Free trading environment. Now, free trading environment can come to be very effective once there's an intermarriage. Suppose Jimmick, I'm sure he's a Thankul. If a Thankul, he goes and marry from Tangsa, there's a free trade there. So automatically, if they see intermarriage, there is everything opens up. So Jimmick, I invite you, if you're unmarried, go and marry a Tangsa girl.
Okay, that is a nice answer. So, if I may, then I would say that this is what I guess what Sir James also had said, when there are so many things which are political, right? So even this is a political thing. It'll if we were to attempt doing such a thing, first of all, we will run into political roadblocks, of course, but I'm sure there are ways to surmount such challenges. But yeah, we will definitely. This is a hugely political act that you're talking about, making such a thing possible. But besides that, okay, just one clarification I would like many of us, I mean, something that should be there in our minds is that when we talk about economics, I think we should pay attention. Most of us emphasize too much upon, trading goods, and things, while not focusing on people. If you care about economics, then it's actually the people, employment, living conditions that we should be more focused on. So why not, instead of a union where goods are being traded, instead of that, how about a union where we work together? Again, it's just I'm just making a small comment. Like workers unions or cooperative movements where we all work together. That's but anyway, just a small comment on this.
Yes, I think it is happening in many of the areas which are overlapping different tribes. It's an automatic thing that our paddy fields overlap, our mountains and hills overlap, and rivers overlap, for which that is a life that we are living daily, where that interaction is happening. You are talking from a point of perhaps the commerce part of it. And I think there is also problems in doing it freely, because we are, just a few days ago, we have been tagged again as a disturbed area. There are international boundaries there between our homelands. There are all kinds of problems. So these are problems foisted on us from without. They may have a colonial legacy. It may be the powers that be that are still using that to divide and rule. And then there are problems from within. And in the Naga community also, I think there are many instances where we compete where it's a question of money, and there are many unfair practices that are on, and the smaller tribes and the peripheral areas get the brunt of those kind of unfair practices amongst ourselves. So I feel it's a very ideal thing, and it should be encouraged, and we should go forward. It is a monetized society. We indigenous people are living in a monetized society. We don't want to view our resources in terms of just monetary value alone. That would be the death of us if we ever looked at it as the rest of society does. But we do need to have resource generation, and I think it's a thing which we can start doing, and we have been doing, and we should continue to try and make at least amongst ourselves and with our neighbors the kind of customary trading that has taken place since from the generations back. I would like Akam to read out one of the questions that are still there, Akam.
Okay.
Ahali Moitra has a question too. If there's time, she would like to also.
Oh,
I think
please,
she should. But
please
Akam,
post.
just
Oh, okay,
before
okay.
that,
Yes, yes.
just before that, whether you have one more question left, or the one to MP Mitra?
Yes. No. Actually, I thought you were talking about the time limit. So, how long? First of all, the crucial thing is how long can we continue this?
Yes,
Long?
it's now around 7:22. My
Yeah.
phone tells me. So can we give it another 10 minutes?
Okay. Just
At most,
so a few last
15?
questions then. Okay. Okay.
Yes, please.
Maybe two questions.
Yes.
Okay. So, Haley, please go ahead.
I think there have been so many interesting discussions, and I've almost forgotten my train of thought because I've followed every discussion possible. But it has been very interesting, mostly because I think the importance of many narratives, I think was very important what Veyopao said, but also the legal problems that we face in Arunachal Pradesh, for example. I'm finding it troublesome to frame my thoughts because I don't want to say anything controversial. But nonetheless, I feel that often in the language of talking about divisions, we forget that there is a lot of divergence and difference within the different places where the Naga issue has come to be articulated as a Naga issue. So, for instance, if we talk about when we began to speak today about the Oinam case, it helped us today to go into the terrain of what kind of, Naga narratives and how to forge unity. I feel that sometimes the language of unity becomes so legalistic as well, that the language of divergence and the multiplicity of these narratives is lost, and we are not able to properly take stock of how, what the business community is saying, or we think that having east, west, north, south, central Nagas is a bad thing, whereas sometimes I feel, as someone like quite far away and possibly unaffected by daily lives, that it could be very useful to see what the business community says, what the different forms of intellectual thoughts and theoretical paradigms that the different Nagas are taking, or what the east, west, north, south, if someone is walking out, what does it have to say about also the Naga narrative, as opposed to having this one Naga narrative, which I feel in the Indian case has always been problematic, because by constantly upscaling all problems to the Indian scale, what we don't see is what is a Tamil problem, or within the Tamil or Bengali problem, what are the many different issues of self-determination that each community comes to frame through its own language, through its own issues, and what goes on there. For instance, like I have never reported when I was reporting for Morung Express from Arunachal Pradesh. So often we were never able to bring that into the narrative, what the many things it means to be Naga, because there are so many divergences. And I think to many of our readers, it may not have been clear at all whether there is a legal or cultural or any different category of Nagas in Arunachal Pradesh and what kind of lives they may lead. So anyway, my point was, I mean, having listened to everyone, was that, I mean, I think the language of divergence and multiplicity is more important than the language of division, and which I feel also creates the anti-Naga while creating the Naga as well. And it's not always useful because we don't see differences in their stride and how useful they are for weaving these common structures. I don't know if any of it makes sense, but just putting my thoughts out there.
Yeah. Ali, can you try to say it in a way where it's what you have put out as the things that are maybe bothering you about the kind of narratives taking place? Can you frame it in a way where we can also dig in and give out some of our thoughts?
No, my point is only that having differences, right? Suppose Eastern Naga students organization working out, for me, sometimes could contribute to a useful narrative towards the larger Naga narrative. If we take in our stride also seriously what each of these differing parties are saying, and often we don't take it, we say that it's, you know, they're walking out, or somebody's saying something that is opposing to the Naga narrative, as if a Naga narrative exists in its formal structure as just one narrative. What I'm saying is that one narrative is not there and it should not be there. But there should be all of these narratives that are also differences should come together as a shared future weaving. So I mean, I'm not sure what comments I'm really encouraging, but also I'm just saying, like, for instance, what Veyopa was saying about women, for instance, right? As soon as a different narrative comes into the picture, often it is termed anti-Naga. And it is not necessary that people who have different narratives, or groups and communities that have different narratives, are contributing to division or factionalism and tribalism, but they may be contributing to what is the many Naga narratives that are. So take stock of these in a useful manner.
Okay, yes, that there is space for these kind of divergences, and to use them in order to examine our situation more critically. Dr. Viu Pao, would you like to add something to that?
No, I mean, I think I consider it more like a comment on the kind of session that we have had. But I think Aheli also made some important points to the fact that we have. I think there is always, I mean, constantly since, you know, the many decades of the movement, Naga movement, there has always been an enforcement to actually belief in one, that this should be the, official, history. But that official history, when challenged, is seen as a kind of a traitor, challenging the larger narrative. So while we may have the belief that there is a need for a grand narrative, the grand narrative being that we're all part of the story, we will look forward to peace someday when there is a progressive settlement of the problem. While at the same time, I think the lack on our part is also that we have not been good at listening to each other. And perhaps that is also the reason why there are so much of disjunctures. There's so much of perhaps even violence, because the Mr. A is not been heard, and therefore Mr. A wants to terminate Mr. B, because Mr. B wants to bring about a different approach to the whole issue. And I guess that is the reason, which I also mentioned briefly in my presentation, that this is the root behind all the bloodsheds that we continue to fail to contain the whole issues of problem. I guess this is also the reason why the FNR, Journey of Common Hope, is struggling to take things forward, because people are not willing to come forward to a common platform. That's why I ended up by saying that even though we have brilliant churches, magnificent churches, we still don't, really inculcate the Christian virtue of forgiveness, because we are at the end, if I were to put it in the strong words, Christian hypocrites, not practicing what we actually believe. And that, I think, is one of the present tragedies we have, because we have not learned to forgive our brothers. There may be so many things that has happened in the jungles of Burma, as we all refer to. Many of these narratives have been silenced. We will never know, perhaps, because many have died, given up their lives for the cause of the nation. But wherever they die, in whichever camp they died, they all died thinking that they died for the nation. And I think that is true, because all of them believe what it is. Even the Accordists believe that what they did was something good for the Nagas. The non-Accordists also believe the same. The NPC, when they came to forge a peace settlement in the early 60s, also thought that they're doing something good for the nation. And when the current ceasefire is being announced, they also thought that, all these are being done for the cause of the nation. And that is the narrative which we have been told. And we have to believe also at a certain point of time. But at the same time, questioning how things are going at the moment is not necessarily to actually go against the movement. To be able to question and also interrogate ourselves is something which we need to do. As insiders, we have a better solution to the problem we have. Somebody out there will not be able to give us, a magical peace tomorrow. But what we have and what we really believe. But at the same time, there are so many things that we have learned to hold on to, including the system that has been imposed upon us. The Indian system of functioning, whether it's in commerce or business or education, we have inculcated so much into our being as a Naga that it is so difficult to actually undo many of these things. So education system, whether we like it or not, the Indian system of education or the colonial system of education has so much become a part of what we are. And that is where I also come back to again, that how then should we live when we still wait for the final solution? When we are still waiting for that thing, even though in one angle we pretend that nothing is happening to us, we've been influenced by so many things. And we see that many Nagas have become more Indians than many Indians across the country. You find that, tomorrow if the settlement is being brought to the table, we will end up killing more people ourselves, more than what we have done to ourselves in the past. And I think that's my worry, because one solution, in the way which one group, until they all come together in a table, and it is something which, again, is a wish fulfilling, I guess, for most of us, because it seems impossible now at the moment, as we see it, to see groups come together. I may be a pessimistic person, but I hope I am on the lesser side of people who hold this position. I hope that there are people who are more positive, that they can be more things. But looking at things, I cannot help but become skeptic of the whole situation, because our leaders are not willing to come to the table. Our leaders are not willing to forgive each other. And that is a sad reality. When you hear their stories, they are still very angry and they're willing to take vengeance upon each other. And also because of so many groups, we may blame the Indian intelligence for breaking up all these kind of groups we have in our, which is also true. But at the same time, it is also a failure on our part to have let all these things crop up. We have not actually taken advantage of the opportunities that we have when we should have taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Haley, I thank you for your intervention. More than a question, I'd say it was an intervention. And there is the congruence with what Dr. View was talking about earlier, that there have to be different narratives, there have to be different voices, and we need many different voices to be able to be the whole that we want to be. Akam, may I ask you to just take one more question, because I can see some other questions have also come. But if we have said, let's take it till another 15 minutes at the outermost limit, then we are going to cross that very soon.
No, in fact, yeah, let this be the last question. I think
Yes.
we're out of time.
Yes.
Yeah. So now the problem is I'll have to pick one. There are two questions addressed to NPMHR. I'm not sure whether we should take it up, today or some other event.
Yes.
Should we?
Yeah, I think MPMHR will always be there. Hopefully this platform will continue further on. So would you like to take up something else?
Okay. Okay. It's again some are addressed to KTEP, who is not here anymore. All right. There's one by Nehemiah. So he's asking, okay, history is one most controversial thing. Nagas with various political groups are asserting their legitimacy to be the mandated group. How can the history of Nagas unite in such a situation? Will it not be prudent to start with the worldviews of Nagas as a basis to unite the Nagas through formal teaching or studying material? And this is addressed to no one in particular. So, anyone?
Yes. I think this is something which we totally agree with. It is most controversial. We are living the history that we are in right now. We are waiting for the dust to settle, as Dr. View's book has said. Dr. View, would you like to take up this question?
Okay, no, I think I will go back to, if I speak, I will go back to, something which I somehow have referred to earlier also. If James also can share, that will be good. But I think
Yes.
what Nehemiah raised is something which I absolutely agree on. Like Ayo also said, that it is a controversial issue, and sometimes it is about who writes, what part of history that you are actually reading it. And like I said, because we are from an oral society, what story is being told to you becomes the legitimate story to hold on to. That, even the story of nationalism that we believe in. While at the same time, I think there are lots of things which may differentiate us from each other. Certainly, there are lots of things which unites us. You know, we may not have the same language that we speak. Of course, today we can say English is one, or even Nagamis. However much we might want to deny that language, it is a part of our language. You know, Nagamis is a Naga language now, whether we like it or not. Also, those sort of things. You know, finding the commonality is certainly the key factor to actually unite us. That certainly is there. But how do we inculcate this in our system, our education system, provide the material? I think, like Ayo said, you know, we have conflicts at all levels, you know, from village to the next village or one house to their house. You know, we have all sorts of things. But those are at the micro level. We have the macro level and all these things that we can actually look at. Providing materials for us to look into, you know, which goes back to our system, which is already in place. We are so much following a system which India provides for us. And perhaps, you know, I think our student bodies or other kind of organizations can focus on initiating this kind of thing. One of the most comforting things that I saw when I was on a tour, actually 4 or 5 years back, in one of the colleges, Jaffe College, if I may refer to, there, during the summer vacation, the students are asked to go and do research. Now, this is a summer holiday exercise. Depending on your subject, if you're from literature or other sociology, you are asked to go to your native village, go back, gather the stories, bring them back, and they are actually asked to compile. Now that's a very good exercise, I thought, that, you know, which many colleges don't actually let the students do. Even though the school curriculum may restrict them to doing such a thing, at least they can do. And I'm told that 100% of the people are actually enthusiastic about doing these things. Go back, go to your village, talk to an older person who may not live another winter to tell you another story. And, you know, that's a way of actually encouraging our younger generation to go back to our roots and see that things are not completely lost as long as you have the effort and the interest to take things on. And for us, many of us, as we speak also, that we have so much of disconnections because we have lost our grandparents, because our grandparents, and for me too, you know, I am the second generation of, you know, those who actually pursue education. My father being one, my grandparents are no more there. So my father's parents' generation, you know, pursued formal education, and therefore there is that disconnect that happened a generation before. So when I try to go back to understand what is happening, you know, I find a sense of disjuncture, a sense of violently being torn apart from my culture because I have no close ones to actually go back to. And it's such a beautiful thing to actually find people who can actually tell you stories about how our life is, the culture is. And yet, you know, unfortunately, this is something which the next generation will have to see the horror of not being able to find people who will tell them about people there, about their own culture. So I think our generation is still at that brink of, you know, of being able to, in one way, make history by still being able to connect, or, you know, take a step back and ignore and let our children, you know, be completely disconnected to the entire, you know, legacy of, you know, what would we say, the repository of knowledge that we have, even in our culture. And I dread that is happening in many families, many societies, especially people who are actually from the towns and the cities, because we have less connections to find. And I suppose that is something which is a tragedy which is staring at us.
Yes. Thank you. Dr. Pao, we, I think, would all be able to share with what you have just elaborated on. We find that this question of our Nagas being able to have a Naga worldview is seriously challenged by the small petty bickerings that are going on. But I would say the ideal thing would be to have a Naga worldview, which could accommodate the many voices that we are talking about today. Before we close, I just want to ask if Mr. James Wanglat would like to add anything.
Nothing in particular, but I just saw someone writing about that, asking a question about Jimmy. Lesotho said that Jimmy is asking about trading and commerce in, interaction with Naga areas, communities without central taxes and economic restriction. There is no restriction at all. You can come. In Itanagar, we have some of the best Naga food restaurants. So people are doing very well, fantastically. One of the best selling business in Itanagar is the Naga food. So also there are people who are in Tangsa area, in Nokte area. Their construction road and others they're doing, but central taxes and economic restriction, I don't think there's any economic restriction as such. But if there is a tax that is to be paid, if you're doing contract, obviously you have to pay. You may not pay once we have this pan-Naga umbrella. So pray for that.
Thank you. I think we want to also acknowledge that the richness of any panel is their willingness to go the extra mile during the interaction. And I really want to thank Dr. Viopao. I want to thank James Wanglet. And we look to you in the future days also to continue to inform the common aspiration that we have as Naga people from different areas of the homeland. We want to also thank our NSF president. I think he's had problems with poor connectivity. And though he's not with us perhaps right now, I just want to thank Mr. Tepp for having given his time. It has been very good to hear him talk about the youth and the fact that they do want to go against isms. And I think we would be supporting that view that isms will not get us to the place we want to take, our rightful place, but it is this kind of accommodation and the willingness to admit that we all need one another. I want to end the 21st Morung Dialogue with what I find as being very, very necessary right now. And this is how I want to end, with something that I read out, which says, just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body. Now, if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable, and the parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty, while our presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. And therefore, there is one history, but there are many stories, and we're all different parts of the same body. And we are, therefore, having hope for the future. One of the questions that NPMHR has been given, which we couldn't go to due to lack of time today, is what is the NPMHR's vision for taking the present talks forward? I think there's a process on, and in that process, all of us are required. It's a process, and therefore we must honor the process. And as we go in it, we are all required. And with those words, I want to say that we are just honored to have had our very distinguished panelists today. Thank you for going the extra mile. Thank you for everyone who's still stuck around with us to the end. Have a good weekend. Have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sayong. And thank you all the participants. And may I also kindly request speakers and MPM leaders to kindly stay back for a few moments.
Thank you.
Thank you, NPMHR, for inviting